All right, so let's talk about operations management. I'm Dr. David Boyson. So we are going to look at the course outline in these areas, understanding the context and challenges of global operations management. We will look at contemporary issues in operations management, total quality management, lean production management, just-in-time approaches, and then business process re-engineering. So these are the learning outcomes. At the end of the class, student or this course student should understand how operation excellence may become a source of sustained competitive advantage in both manufacturing and service operations. And also to use the product process matrix to discuss the link between business process strategy or business strategy and product and process choices. And also to analyze business process, identify appropriate performance metrics, and use these metrics to improve process performance, looking at output, process times, and productivity. And they understand why variability has a detrimental impact on manufacturing service operations and apply models to estimate its impact and then evaluate alternatives to reduce it. Understand the characteristics, advantages, and limits of most representative manufacturing models, such as push and pull. Identify the pillars of lean manufacturing, such as just-in-time, total quality management, and understand how and when they can be applied to service operations. Understand why supply-demand mismatches are a constraint to profitability in industries with volatile demand, and examine the source of these mismatches. As well, identify structural remedies and analytical techniques to hedge against demand uncertainties. So, operations management is a discipline or an area in management which permeates every aspect of most organizations and of firms' activities. And every business is in one form of operations management or the other, whether being in purely manufacturing industry or service industry. Operations is simply transferring or processing input into output. In other words, you change the state of raw materials into finished goods. If it's a service, the service is processed with some sort of input, and then it goes through the transformation process, then you have the output. So basically, in simplistic terms, we will say that the operation transform raw materials into finished product. And in every organization, you have operations sitting at the core of the organization's activity. So, for instance, when you get to the service industry, they do operations. What do? They deliver service. And they deliver the service by using some input and then changing the form of the input in a certain way that can be used to deliver the service to the customer. So an example is when you go to the bank and you want to, as it were, open an account. So what really happens is this: the lady at the front desk is going to receive you and ask you some few questions. Now, but what is he going to use to receive or to deliver that service? He has the computer, she has the pen, she has the book, she has the forms, there are other, other activities that she's engaged in, but of course, the infrastructure that that person sits in, that office, is part of what the input, and also all the other fittings and fixtures that are provided are part of the input to provide the service. So at the end of the day, the lady asks the account opener a question, and then the question is answered, a form is filled. So those inputs are used, and then whatever the person gives us information, account opener, is used to process the account opening activity. So it goes through a stage, a form is filled, is entered into the machine. So the computer also acts as the inputs that the bank use as process the account opening. And then at the end of the day, signatures are signed, many of the activities, approvals are given, and then the final output is that an account is opened. The person receives an email or a text message that your account is opened, a deposit is put into it, and then the service ends. So what happened? The person came in without any account, but the bank used the kind of the input tools or the input items to transform the information that was given to them into the opening of an account. And in some jurisdiction, I don't know, currently some banks are not using a checkbook. A checkbook is issued to that person in about 2 weeks or a week's time. So in a service setting, that is how operations work. And then when you come to the manufacturing setup, you see maybe the manufacturing company is dealing in production of, flour. So they get the raw materials from somewhere, and this raw material is then, transformed in a manner. It goes through a series of processes and operations floor. There are some other materials added, and if they have to produce the flour, they have other materials that they also procure, i.e., the bagging material. They also have issues with other additives that are going to be added. Of course, the flour will be, the raw flour will be the number one raw material, or the major one they are going to use. So these things are added, and at the end of the day, you have your flour produced and bagged. When you go to the automobile industry, a vehicle is produced. Even for those who do assemblies, it goes through a certain process. They receive the car parts, and then it is being put together into a complete vehicle. So there is the input, there is the processing stage and output. Every organization is into operations, and operations sits at the heart of every organization. So let's see how operations work in most organizations, the interplay between the three major departments. We have the finance, operations, and marketing department. So for instance, the marketing team might go to market and then maybe do some sort of intelligent marketing. Look at products, look at trends, look at which one is leading in terms of market share and all that. And they might come up with some sort of information based on their research, and then tell the other department that, hey, we are seeing that this particular company is making inroads in the sales of this particular product, but we believe we can enhance it. So we can develop a kind of a substitute for it and enhance that product. So these research will come, and then to the other departments, they will present. And what operations will basically do is to look at the product itself, whether they can manufacture it. They will look at the fact that if they have the technology to manufacture. They look at the fact that whether they have the skill set to manufacture. You look at the fact that whether there is sustained supply of raw materials for that particular product. If the raw materials are going to source from a region that is closer to them, then it makes sense. If they have to export, which countries are they going to export the raw materials from, and at what cost? Then finance will then come in with also some sort of analysis to find out, okay, if there is really market or demand for this product, how do we raise funds to do that? Okay, so let's compare, let's do some sort of feasibility, analysis, and then find out whether it makes sense to invest into this product. And they will do their investment appraisals. They will look at the profitability index. They will look at the NPV. They will look at the internal rate of return. They will look at the opportunity cost of even producing this product. If they were to use the money for something else, would it be prudent to do that rather than investing in this? So all these analysis will be done. And if they are good to go, then the product will be manufactured. Of course, they will do a prototype and go through new product development cycle to make sure that there are no mistakes or there are no errors so that the product can be fully launched. So just to let you know that in a typical organization, there's the interplay between the marketing function, the operation function, and finance. They work in tandem to ensure that the main objective of the organization is achieved, and that is achieved through their transformation of the raw materials into finished good. The marketing team and the finance team cooperate with or work with operations department to make sure that this dream is realized. So operation can be seen as that part of organization that is responsible for producing goods or services. And as I said, most organizations are into that. And goods are physical items that include raw material. It could be sub-assemblies, it could be motherboard, it could be computers or automobile part of a cell phone. It could be, any other good. Like I gave a typical example, like a flour. It could be also raw material. It could be also a product, which is finished goods. And then we have services that are activities that provide some combination of time and location, form of psychological value. Now, finance is responsible for sourcing financial resource at favorable prices. And as I said, and allocating these resources through the organization, as well as budgeting, analyzing investments, our proposals, and providing funds for it. As indicated, finance is responsible for securing the financial resources So that's the work of finance, just to ensure that they secure the financial resources for the production of the goods and services. And as you saw, I explained the interplay between these three departments. Marketing, of course, has the primary goal of driving sales, and they bring all the demand levels. They do the market research, come out with some sort of assessment of customer needs and all that to ensure that the organization is able to produce the product at a certain level and then make the profit. So the marketing function drives the whole process in there in terms of the demand for the product, creating more visibility for the product or service. So we can model this whole concept of operations management as these pictures that you see. So we can look at the organization as the vehicle and the operations as the engine. So when we say operation is the engine that drives every organization, what we mean is that without operation, the car is useless. You cannot use it. So organizations exist to produce goods and services, and these goods and services can only be produced through the activities of what operation, through the transformation of raw materials into finished goods. And that's why operation becomes very, very important. So the management of operations is responsible at looking at the core aspects of the business. In other words, to put in a better perspective, operations management is responsible for managing that core part of the organization. Hence, management of system or processes that creates goods and services are very paramount. And the process of managing and the resources that are needed to produce an organization goods and services is very vital. So management, of course, is defined as using the scarce resource to achieve organization objective. Other people have defined management as the process of planning, organizing, controlling, and leadership, etc. But the fact of the matter is that we are looking at the operations of the organization, how we can manage the resources, i.e., the material resources, the human resources, and other resources, financial resources to achieve organizational objectives. So operations managers focus on managing the 5 Ps. And the 5 Ps we are talking about: the people, plant, part, process, and planning and control processes. And that is according to G.Dessler 2003. So systematic direction, control, and evaluation of the entire range of processes in the organization to transform goods or services into, the final product is very important. And operations management in other jurisdictions also defined as the design and operation and improvement of the systems that create value and deliver the firm's product and services to customers. So that is what operations management is. And I just also want to put this into the perspective of the supply chain process. Operations is within the supply chain process. In fact, we have the upstream, we have the operations management itself, and the downstream. So operations sits at the center. The upstream deals with our interaction with suppliers and how we're able to source this raw materials. So if you look at this diagram, we have the suppliers. That is, you can have the first tier supplier, the immediate one, the second tier, and the third tier one. Then you have the direct suppliers. Then you have the producer. So the producer now is operations, all right? And the distribution aspect is when operations is done with the product, it goes to the distribution centers. If we have some kind of a multi-layer distribution channel, i.e. we have the wholesaler, we have the retailer, and the customer, then this channel will be that long. And the longer the channel is, the more the price of the product in some jurisdiction goes up. In other jurisdictions, they put a price ceiling that even though the channel is very stretched, but they will still keep the prices at a minimal level. And then it gets to the final consumer. So you have the suppliers, direct suppliers. This is the supplier, and this is the organization that turns the product into the final the raw materials into final product, and that is the work of operations. And then the distributor, that is the distribution channel, depending on how the product is planned to get to the customer. In some jurisdictions, you are not, or some instances, you are not, you don't have the option than to use a very huge or very complex distribution channel to get the product to the customers who are at far places. So this is an example of operations management. And we said operations, the creation of goods and services involve transforming or converting input into output. And various inputs such as capital, labor, and information are used to create goods or services using one or more of the transformation service. So look at this. So at the input section, we have land, labor, capital, and information, right? And this one goes into a transformation process. Here, there is some sort of control. And this control is to make sure that whilst the inputs are fed in, if there are any errors, it goes back. And this is what we call quality assurance. So the control is not at the output aspect, it's rather at between the input and the transformation, to ensure that we only produce goods that are defect-free. So we put all these input parameters in, we transform, the transformation of the conversion section happens, and then you have the output at the end of the day. That is the goods and service. So we gave an example. At the bank used land. The land that the bank is, the building is built on. They use labor, the human resource. They use capital. This capital are invested in buying certain things, even the land itself, probably, or the rent of the place, or better still, if there was a lease, the capital part of it probably might be invested in that. The fixtures and fittings at the bank, the layout, how the decoration, they are all part. Labor is the human resource they use, and the information is also how they receive information from the customers and how that information is processed into, finished goods. So these are inputs, right? And then I also indicated that the bank use other stationery like pens, books, notepad, and all that. They also use, as it were, computers to work, and these are all input items. And then when it goes to the value added point where there's the transformation, this is where there's the conversion of the raw material into what? Finished goods. And it's at this point that we put a control mechanism here to make sure that if the goods at the point of transformation, we detect any defect, it goes back to the input section and to ensure that we only get goods that are defect-free. And then we have also the transformation process where we have the output, we have the goods and services, and you see the control also as part of the linkages between transformation process and the output to show that in case we are unable to achieve defect-free and the goods or services, let me put it in the context of a good, because service cannot be stored. The goods or product is produced defective, we will do inspection and make sure it doesn't get to the customer. So here there are two things. There's a quality assurance between input and transformation, and then also quality control between transformation and output, as you say it. So just to cite some few examples in some industries and what they do as part of their operation. So you have example, computer factory. Their basic input is what you are seeing: hard drives, computer memory, computer chips, keyboards, cases, power supply, DVDs, drives, central circuit board. These are their input, and the transformation assembles components to meet customer orders, including specialized orders for hardware and software. And then the output, desktop or laptop computers, okay? So this is what happens in the computer factory. The tracking firm, their input tracks personnel, buildings, fuel, goods to be shipped, packing, supplies, trucks, parts, utilities, and the transformation, packing, and transport goods from source to destination, and the output is delivered goods. So this one is purely a service. Then we have department stores, buildings, displays, scanners, merchandise, personnel, supplies, utilities. So you see that these inputs are for services, but service also has inputs, okay? I mean, most students think that because service, the production and consumption is at the same time, it doesn't have input, but these are the input. Then the transformation is attracts customers, stores goods, sells products, and the output is mechanized, sold. And then automobile body shop, we have damaged autos, paints, supplies, machines, tools, building, personnel, utilities, and the transformation process transform damaged on auto bodies into facsimiles of the originals, and the output is repaired automobile bodies. Then the county sheriff's department, we have personnel, police equipment, automobiles, office equipment, buildings, utilities, and the transformation is detects crime and brings criminals to justice. And then output is lower crime rates and peaceful communities. So what we would want to do is that in your own leisure time, I want you to identify a particular organization and then indicate their inputs, outputs, input transformation and output system, just like this. You can write them in the boxes, and then you tell us. So you give, for instance, the organization, they are into production of this particular goods or services, and then you give the primary input and how the inputs are processed and how we are able to get the output. So you can see here, there are distinctions between goods and services here. So we just want to distinguish between good and service. Good are tangible products. They are good that you can touch. It has a shape, it has color, it can be inventoried, it can be stored. It has low customer contact. Low customer contact. In other words, for a good, you do not have, the customer doesn't have to always have that close contact with it. Low customer contact. So if the person selling the product doesn't need to be there, all right? The customer can order the food maybe online and it can be shipped to that person. So low customer contact, you have visibility and all that. And then it has longer response time. Longer response time until you consume the goods. You will not be able to give the feedback to the producer or the company. So it takes longer time for customers to respond when it comes to the feedback. And goods are capital intensive as compared to service. They are very, very capital intensive. If you want to set up a manufacturing plant to produce a particular product, you can imagine what goes into it, the capital, the share capital investment. And then for services, they are intangible because production and consumption is at the same time. If you go to the barbering shop and then the person is barbering your hair, the fact of the matter is that the activity is happening real time. Okay, if you go to the bank and you're opening an account, the activity is happening at the real time. So that is, and then you cannot store it. You cannot store a service and go back and probably come back for it in the future. It cannot be done. And a product can be inventoried, but service cannot be inventoried. Service cannot be inventoried. So service cannot be inventoried, and service also has high customer contact. High customer contact. In the case of the bank, you would have to be there in person. Because of technology, that these times services can be done remotely and all that. But when it's a service like, going to the hospital where you need to see the doctor, or going to a barbering shop for your hair, for a service to be rendered for you, or going to the salon, you would have to be there. So for a service, the service provider will have to be present to be able to deliver the service. For product, the product provider can decide not to be present. And this is very, very important. So high customer contact, and then we have short response time. In fact, the response time is almost immediate. So whilst you get a service, because the production and consumption is at the same time, you have that kind of response time, fast response time. You're able to give feedback whether the service was good or not. And then it is less labor intensive. Okay. Whilst one is no, it is labor intensive. You have high labor intensiveness with a service, because the service provider would have to be there. When you go to the bank, you have to see the teller. They would have to be there to deliver the service. In the case of a product, you see the product on the shelf when you go to a mall, and you just have to pick the product. So that's the difference between a product and a service. So let's see this. So let's take this assignment. In your organization where you work presently, in your organization, describe how inputs are transformed into finished good. You can list them as you use diagrams, or use diagram to illustrate your example. So just as the example I gave, you could do the same thing, okay, with this scenario. Okay, you could do the same thing. So let's just talk about this concepts, right? Let's talk about this concept. So these key concepts are very important in operations management: efficiency, effectiveness, and value. Efficiency is doing something at the lowest possible cost. Efficiency focuses on the process rather than the outcome. Effectiveness focuses on the outcome other than the process. So efficiency is doing something at the lowest possible cost, whilst effectiveness is doing the right things to create the most value for the organization. So you would have to be efficient and effective. Efficiency alone is not enough. You could be efficient, you could focus on the process and lose out when it comes to the output. You could also be effective or looking at the output and then use so much resources to achieve that, and that will be waste. And value is quality divided by price. The quality divided by price gives what? The value. And the value, always when they say something is value for money, it means that the exchange between the gift and gets, there's an equation between the person who is giving and the person who is getting. If the person who is given is, given something like money, and he is receiving more than what he is given, then the thing has gone beyond value for money. It has gone to the stage where we say the expectation of the customer has been exceeded, because he is paying less and receiving more. But when you match the value of the product with the price, then we say that it is value for money. So that's just to give you a brief about the concept of operations management. Now let's look at operation strategy. Operation strategy. Now there are 3 levels of strategy. We have the corporate strategy, we have the business strategy level, and then the functional strategy. The corporate strategy is at the peak of the organization, at the top of the organization, where they define the vision of the organization, they define where they are and where they want to go. So at this level, they define how the organization should compete and also determine the long-term objective of the organization, as well as identify the course of what action, the course of action. So they do that. And then so at the corporate level, the organization also allocates the requisite resources. It is where the business decide which resources to allocate to which business unit or which business portfolio. Is at the corporate level that these decisions are taken. Now, when you come to the business strategy level, this is where the business unit focuses on how to compete within a given business. So if you have a corporate headquarters and then there are other strategic business units that the company is dealing in, maybe different a variety of portfolios. For instance, you have a company that has a corporate office where they have a strategic business unit dealing with maybe media, another one dealing with also like production of what mineral water, and another strategic business unit into real estate. They are all strategic business units. So at the business unit, they focus on how to compete in the given business and determine the competitive approach and strategies that each business unit is going to use itself, and usually treated as a semi-autonomous, from the mother. And they are free to set their strategy under the corporate umbrella. Of course, it has to achieve the overall corporate strategy. And then at the functional level, that is where we deal with the departmental level, where the actual actions are executed, or actions are, the actual policies are implemented. So this is where they craft the moves, approaches to support corporate and business strategies, and kind of develop strategies that can achieve the functional and departmental performance objectives. So this is where the policies are outlined. This is where small projects and initiatives are implemented specifically at the department level to be able to achieve the business strategy, and then also subsequently achieve the overall corporate strategy. So this is an illustration of the organizational chart of the business strategy. So at the business level, this is what happens. And this is the business level at the second level. This is what happens. So you have marketing strategy, operation strategy, and finance strategy. Remember, we talked about how these three departments are interlinked, and each department works on their strategy and make sure they work in tandem with the other departments to achieve the organizational objectives. So marketing defines marketing plans to support the business strategy. Operation strategy develop plan for operation functions to support the business strategy. And finance also does the same. So importance of operation strategy. Why is it important? Because most of the companies do not understand the difference between operation efficiency and strategy. Now, efficiency is just as to make sure that you use minimal resources to achieve, your objective. But the strategy are the plans that are laid out to be able to compete in the market and then gain competitive strategy. So operation strategy is to ensure that all tasks are performed at the right, times. Okay. So looking at operation strategy, it is important to, first of all, place in the proper perspective how organizations cooperate or compete. So business focuses on improving a firm's business unit's competitive position within a specific industry or product market segment itself. But business strategies take the form of competition and cooperation. So organizations can compete. And when they are competing, they battle against themselves, probably on, could be a price, differential. It could be the product itself, getting more market shares and everything. But if in a case where these companies sees a certain threat that is going to consume the entire industry, what they normally do is that they cooperate. All right. So they cooperate to compete with other external factors. For instance, government is bringing a policy that is going to, move them into some sort of extension or collapse their business, then they will come together with that cooperative strategy to fight the enemy. But within themselves, they compete in terms of their product, if their product are substitutes. And so in Ghana, for instance, there's the Tigo and the MTN and then Vodafone. And these three organizations, what they do is they are into competition because they all provide telecommunication services. But when it comes to dealing with the government, when it comes to a new policy, an increase in their taxes, then they have a kind of a body that they come together to address those concerns with government. At that time, they are cooperating to compete. And sometimes they want to wage price war against customers. They all meet and then cooperate, just to wage that, price war against customers. So these are the ways organizations sometimes compete, and they also cooperate. So you can compete, you can cooperate. So this is the operation strategy as we have outlined at the business level, the operations strategy level, and also the functional level where we are actually dealing with what should happen at the floor. So at the business strategy, we say that it's the definition of the long-term plans for the company. Now for exploration strategy, it develops a plan for the operations function focusing on specific competitive priorities in order to meet long-term plans. And the competitive priorities we are looking at is the interplay between cost, quality, time, and flexibility. And at the design of the operation functions, there's a development that focuses on the identified competitive priorities. It looks at the structure, that's the facilities, the flow of goods, technology, and also looks at the infrastructure, that is planning and control what systems, work, pay, and then quality. So operation strategy is a plan design for the design and management of the operations functions. And operations strategy developed after the business strategy, and operation strategy focuses on the specific capabilities. That's very important, which gives the competitive edge. So let's look at the competitive priorities. Now, the competitive priorities is the interplay between these variables, the cost, quality, time, and flexibility. At any point in time, the organization will need to do some sort of trade-off. Are we competing on cost, or we are competing on quality or time or flexibility? What kind of margin or percentage are we going to give to cost, quality, time, and flexibility if we are looking at 100%? Are we competing more on cost? And cost, we are making sure that we are very efficient, and then we are reducing waste from our system and making sure that we are reducing the cost of operations in order to be very competitive. Or we are looking at quality. We are looking at fit for purpose. Do you understand? Conformance and performance. That's what we are looking for. So if it's about quality, then cost is not an issue. We are looking at quality of the product, and that's what we want to use as our competitive edge. And are we looking at time to the market, or time we deliver the product to the customer? If it's a service, the lead time in delivering the service, okay, the shorter the time, the better. So are we competing on time? In some industries, competition on the time is a competing factor. Other industries, cost is a factor. And other industry, quality is a factor. So which one are we looking at? Or are we looking at flexibility? And where we talk about flexibility, we are talking about the fact that the organization can accommodate the taste, the responses of customers in terms of their taste and preferences, Customers are savvy. Today they like this, tomorrow they don't like it. So if a customer, changes the preferences, how can the organization quickly respond to it? And I can use this as an example. If you go to some of the restaurants and you want to buy jollof rice or fried rice or a certain product, the fast food vendors, they're able to do this within a very amazing time. How are they able to do this? They're implementing the flexibility model, which hinges on what we call agility, right? Agile means being flexible. So they do that in the sense that they're able to decouple the process. So if you go to the fast food and they're doing fried rice, the plain rice is already pre-cooked, okay, but not mixed with the additives. The additives are there. The meat or the chicken is not grilled, or the fish is not grilled yet. So as you come in and you say, I want fried rice, then they know that they have to prepare fried rice. So the fried rice is not prepared in its entirety. It is halfway prepared, and then they postpone the completion. So they decouple the process and then postpone the completion. And as and when customers come in and whatever they say they want, I want more spice, then they apply more spice. I want less spice, they apply less spice. I want great chicken, they're able to give great chicken. I want fried chicken, they're able to give fried chicken. I want fish, they're able to give fish, just because they have decoupled the process and postpone the completion. And that is about flexibility, agility. So how do we play around with this? What do we trade off? The company trading off quality for time, flexibility for time, quality for flexibility, or what is it looking at? So you realize that offering product at a lower price relative to competition is very important. Typically, high volume products often limit product range and offer little customization. And you may invest in automation to reduce its cost. You can use lower skilled labor, probably use product focused layout. Low cost does not mean low quality. So if you are using cost, competing on cost, as you say, it really does not mean that you are giving low quality. It means that you are being efficient in your production methods, and you are ensuring that you are able to reduce the cost of production as much as possible. And then we have quality, competing on quality. Quality can be subjective, but we have the standard, that quality that every organization would have to maintain. Probably we could use the International Organization for Standardization, their quality framework. And quality is defined differently depending on who is defining it, and there's this kind of confusion in it. But the fact of the matter is that the product or the services, does it meet the design specification? Is it close tolerance? Is it error-free? Or do you have error-free delivery? This happens with product and service consistency. But if you're looking at high performance design, then you are looking at the superior features, high durability, excellent customer service. These two, dimensions, that's the high performance design and product and service consistency, falls under the two major quality dimensions. And quality needs to be addressed. Product design quality has to be addressed, and the process quality, error-free, has to also be addressed. So if you're looking at quality, the question is, what are you looking at? Are you competing on time? And here is the speed to the market. It is, how the turnaround time is reduced. Are you doing rapid delivery or on-time delivery? Are you focused on shorter time between order placement and delivery? That is the rapid delivery. Or you are doing delivery exactly when the customer needs it. So you need to also take a decision on that in competing for the time. And the flexibility, we are looking at how flexible the company is is in terms of its product and services adjusting to meet customer needs and preferences. So we are asking product flexibility. Easily switch production from one item to the other. Is it possible? Easily customize product service to meet specific requirement of customer. Or you can do volume flexibility. That's what we call mass production. Ability to ramp production up and down to market demands. So these are the competitive priorities. And one will have to look at it and see which trade-off you can do. So who needs to do the trade-off? The organization needs to do that. So we are saying that decision must emphasize priority that support the business strategy, and decision often requires trade-off. And decision must focus on other qualifiers and other winners. So which are priorities? What are our priorities? Other qualifiers, example, must have excellent quality since everyone expects it. And which priorities are other winners? The example, South Airline competes on cost, McDonald's competes on consistency, FedEx competes on speed, customs tailors compete on flexibility. So we are looking at what wins, not what qualifies, what wins. So you might want to look at the interplay between the other qualifiers and other winners. So which ones, what are our priorities? Are we looking at the other qualifiers, or we are looking at the other winners, what it will make us win? So the other qualifiers will look at what they must have quality. And that one, everybody expects it. And the other winners will look at, which of the competitive priorities can give the organization an edge. So you can look at this question, and it goes this way: critically assess the importance of operation strategy in achieving competitive advantage. Operation strategy, and we've talked about operation strategy, and within the operation strategy, you have the competitive priorities. So this question, what would you do? Just share ideas and then let's all work at it. Thank you so much, and then see you in the next lecture.